Scottish salmon was contaminated by cancer-causing chemicals.
More than 5,000 Scottish jobs depend on the industry.
Anti-salmon author on the run.
Mr. Gate, that's locked. I can't come up there. Can I get in that way?
Get your vehicle towed, and I don't think you want that.
No. I know I don't look good, OK? You have any regrets? It was your call. Food scares. First, it was eggs. Remember that one? Salmonella. Then it was beef. That was a big one. Then at one point, I couldn't believe this, curries. Apparently, that's the big worry. Now, salmon. Les, you work with the stuff all the time.
Yep.
You actually eat farmed salmon yourself.
I do, yes. Eat it regular, at least once a week. All of a sudden, we've got in the paper some scientists in America said we've got a problem with farm salmon.
But I mean, they'd have us believe they're dangerous.
We're not scientists. We don't understand it all. We're here to sell fish.
Well, I am a little bit concerned because the papers would have us think it's a big problem. So I'm going to look into it. I'm going to find out, should we worry about salmon? Only eat salmon 3 times a year. Contaminated with toxic chemicals, linked to cancer and birth defects.
It's the mad cow of salmon disease.
Yeah. Mad salmon. I mean,
mad salmon disease.
My wife won't eat it anymore.
I worry what gets into our food chain and how it gets in there and why it gets in the first place.
You are young enough that it might affect you, but for me, to hell with it.
Should I stop eating farm salmon, do you think?
Well, it's
Not that you care, but...
stunted your growth, isn't it? So...
No, I'm actually very tall. I'm standing in a hole. Toxic chemicals...
OK, well, personal abuse aside, it's clear that people are concerned. Some people have even stopped eating this stuff. Is farm salmon full of toxic chemicals? Will it give me cancer? My best lead are the newspaper stories. Where did they get their information from? That's my first stop.
Good morning. Richard Hammond, BBC. I just wondered, do you know the guy who wrote this? Do you know anything about this headline? Who wrote it, or... No. Do you know anything about salmon? No. Richard Hammond, BBC. Do you remember BBC One? It's a programme called Should I Worry About? It's about salmon in this instance. And it's very good. Excuse me, Richard Hammond, BBC. Do you remember that headline?
I'm sorry, I don't remember.
Ah, right. Coffee. Early morning appointment. Richard Hammond, BBC. Do you know anything about salmon headlines? Do you remember?
Right, I'm not getting any answers here, but those newspaper reports caused a huge stir and even a drop in salmon sales. So I still want to know, where did they get their facts from? Now, that fishmonger, remember him, Les, mentioned something about American scientists. It's time for a bit of in-depth research.
And I've read in here, an American toxicologist involved in the study, the project based at the University of Albany, New York State. Easy. Right then. Oops. I think I might have left it connected. It's going to cost. Let's get rid of that. And I'm really struggling with this. Here we go. Health risk associated with consuming farm-raised salmon.
Turns out the report was in a proper highbrow science magazine.
First global sampling study reveals health risks associated with consuming farm-raised salmon.
I need to talk to the man who wrote it.
There it is, David Carpenter, MD, Director of the Institute for Health and the Environment at the University at Albany. Anti-salmon author on the run. The co-author of the damaging report into toxic contamination of Scottish farm salmon has pulled out of an Edinburgh conference where he was to defend his research. Basically, he said all this stuff and all this has gone off, and then he's not turning up to defend it. He's on the run. So, I want to talk to him. Right, so I'm going to just send him. What am I going to say? Well, I'm going to tell him what I'm doing. I mean, he said all this stuff. Dear Dr. David Carpenter. I've got that feeling you get when you're doing something that's not going to work, but I mean, if he has gone on the run, why is he going to want to talk to me? OK, well, for what it's worth, there it goes. Sent. Right, well, that's that. I'm not going to sit and wait. I'm going to try and find out more about these, well, the things that are going to kill us.
Apparently, it's things called PCBs and dioxins, whatever they are.
Hi, yes.
A work colleague, Beth, has told me to speak to her friend Simon, who's a nutritionalist specialising in contaminants in food. Hopefully she can tell me more about why Dr. Carpenter is making all this noise about farm salmon.
So what exactly are they?
They're toxic man-made chemicals. PCB stands for polychlorinated biphenyls, so a long word for basically saying it's a toxic chemical which was used early in the 1920s and 30s, the Industrial Revolution, to help create electrical equipment. And the dioxins are also toxic chemicals just released into the environment with the paper industry when things are burnt, basically.
So they're both chemicals, and they're both bad for us, and they're both in the environment, and they get taken into food. So are they in, I mean, would they be in, I don't know, look, a shepherd's pie?
Definitely, because
Really?
basically all these toxic chemicals we're talking about are fat soluble. So if they're in the environment anyway, because they're non-biodegradable, so they're just lingering around, the cow, the beef, or basically eats the vegetation and eats all the rubbish around, and all the toxins get stored in the animal's body fat. We eat the animal, and they get stored in our body fat.
So it goes into the food chain and into us.
And because we're at the top end of the food chain, we're eating a lot of creatures which have already absorbed these toxins.
I mean, look at these little fellas here, prawns. They're near the bottom of the food chain, aren't they?
Yeah. So
But
they
it would be in there.
Definitely.
But then
you
they'd
would
be eaten by something big.
Like a salmon.
Like a salmon. So then
Yeah.
my salmon comes along and eats those.
So
and they've eaten something
yeah.
else, so it's...
Salmon, we would predict that salmon would have more toxins than the prawns, and so the bigger fish.
So if we had an even bigger fish to eat the salmon, that...
Yes.
OK, I think I've got that. There are toxic, cancer-causing chemicals in lots of our food. Great. But the obvious question now is farm salmon worse than anything else? I persuaded Simone to test the foods I eat all the time, semi-skim milk, mince, eggs, as well as the farm salmon. Now, she was looking for the chemicals that she'd been telling me about, the ones that can cause cancer. The results were, well, amazing. After everything I'd read, I was expecting the salmon to have the highest levels, but it didn't come close. Simone even did the tests again to make sure. The eggs and the mince had higher levels of the toxins than the farm salmon, only the milk had less. That test has really shaken my faith in this salmon scare story. In light of that, how much does Simone think I should eat? Well, it turns out that's not so simple either.
So the most confusing thing is the varying safe levels which we can actually consume, because the science report, which was what this whole thing blew up based on, was from the American studies, from the Environmental Protection Agency. Their guidelines are that amount for the whole year. That's what they recommended in America.
Right.
Now that compares to the Food Standards Agency. So in this country, our guidelines of the same thing of Scottish farm salmon is this amount per year.
Right. Hang on, this is loads. Do you want a hand there?
Yes, please.
Seriously? We've
Yeah.
got... Well, I'll organise it. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. And it's very confusing because how many have you put in here?
We're up to about 40 now.
40.
And the Food Standards Agency for Europe recommend about 40 to 50.
So once again, we've got this ridiculous situation where America says 2, Europe says 40
About
to 50.
40 to 50 of the Scottish farm salmon. So it's both the same type of salmon, but that's the varying difference. That's why this report's been confusing, because
Yes.
different countries are recommending different levels.
You've made it even more confusing, Simone. Thank you very much.
Anytime.
Have I got to pay for this lot?
So, am I any further forward? Well, obviously, Simone's tests have put my mind at rest a bit. Up to this point, I haven't seen anything that's going to stop me eating salmon, especially as it's full of omega-3, a fatty acid that we're always being told is essential for good health. But surely there's more to this story. I think I need to see one of these salmon farms for myself. But first,
I can also find out if Dr. Carpenter replied to my email. Is it all right if I use the internet up there? Yeah. Thank you. Right. Yeah, because I sent that email a while ago. I want to hear back, see if we've heard anything.
Since I wrote that email, I've seen and learned a lot, and now I do have some serious questions that I think he should answer. I need to talk to the man, but according to the papers, it looks like that's not going to be easy.
David Carpenter. He has replied. That's him. Mr. Impossible to track down, Mr. See, there's a bit of journalism for you.
One email.
Right. I would love to meet and discuss our report on contaminants in farm salmon. I think I might talk to him.
Hi there.
Dr. Carpenter.
Yes.
Crikey. My name's Richard Hammond, calling from the BBC. Thank you for your email and for responding to it. I was a bit surprised.
You're surprised?
Well, to hear back from you, everybody's said that you're on the run.
No, that's not true at all.
Well, evidently, you're talking to me now.
That's right.
Would it be possible for us to meet then?
I think it should be.
Have you ever looked at it? Have you ever been to visit a salmon farm?
No, I haven't. I haven't ever seen a salmon farm.
Right, because it is a bit of a trek for you, I know. But I was going to go to Scotland. Would you meet me there?
I would love to do that. I'm very happy to discuss this issue with anybody in a reasonable setting, but I'm not so stupid as to knowingly go into something that's an ambush.
Well, look, I won't set it up now because we're on the I'm on the telly, and it would be so I'll call you discreetly at a quiet moment, and we'll sort out when and where.
Thanks very much. I'll
Okay.
look forward to meeting you.
I'll see you then.
Good.
Don't you love it when a plan comes together? I really didn't expect that at all. I'm stunned and amazed, but absolutely delighted. So we're going to get to talk to him. This man that the press said was on the run and that they said was evil and everything else. There's so much to talk to him about. I'm going to do it.
It caught me by surprise, but Dr. Carpenter agreed to come all the way from Albany near New York and meet me in Scotland. Takes about 2 days, which gives me time to explore an alternative to farm salmon, and one that I'm quite excited about. Wild salmon. Natural diet, lower in toxins, and sounds like it's more fun to come by.
Excuse me. Fly fishing. I want to go fly fishing.
North of Scotland, there's plenty of rivers up here for fishing.
I know this might seem like a bit of a jolly, but trust me, it's all part of my mission.
I know I don't look good, okay? Right, okay. Humiliate me.
Up to your ear, and that wee pause. Yeah. Now, no, chuck it in.
Hasn't gone anywhere.
Make the rod work.
I just look like a big, soppy underarm throwing rounders player.
After 2 long hours of investigative journalism, Eddie the boss arrives to see how I'm getting on.
How am I doing?
No, honestly, that's really good.
Jimmy was much harsher than you. I prefer learning with you. If we caught a salmon out of here today... Sorry? Too far back? Sorry?
Yeah.
It's criticised.
Yeah, absolutely, yes, yeah.
Kind of the reason we're here. Really, if you want to get the benefits of salmon, then there's no doubting those. But in absolute safety, confidence you're going to avoid PCBs.
Yes.
Wild salmon is the way to go.
Yes.
It's very it's difficult to get hold of.
No
They're
question.
also very, very expensive.
Of course, it's difficult to get a hold of, and that is why I think there is a place for farm salmon. There's little doubt, and the professor's murmurings hasn't helped the fish farming industry at all.
This David Carpenter?
Yeah.
So you've heard of him then?
I have heard of him, and then everything went dead. It's almost like he decided that maybe he hadn't been too wise in making the statements that he had made.
So I don't know quite what to make of it. He's agreed to talk to me. He's agreed to come all the way over here. Well, he actually said he'd go and see a fish farm.
Really?
Yeah. Actually, have a look at one.
Well, I'd be very, very interested to see what the fish farmers had to say to him.
Should I take him to him?
Well, yeah. Well, I think in fairness to the fish farmers, you're talking about people's livelihoods.
All I need to do is find a fish farm. I was going to go to the Orkneys.
Yes.
Because, there's 2 on there. They're both, I've read...
All that hard work and no wild salmon. It looks like if I want the benefits, I'll have to rely on the farm variety. The trip to Orkney gives me time to think. What do I know so far? Simon's tests were reassuring. I know I need the salmon's omega-3, and the recommendations here in Europe are that we eat it once a week. Even Eddie told me that he eats it. I'm more keen than ever to see what Dr. Carpenter has got to say for himself. He's due in an hour, which leaves me just enough time to find out how much his report has affected the local community.
Now, I've arranged over the phone to meet a guy called Willie in the harbour. Don't know what he looks like, but he runs one of the companies mentioned several times in the newspaper coverage as being one of those that had a bit of a tough time. I'm assuming he's got a beard. Not a lot to go on, but every investigator needs a hunch. Excuse me. You don't know somebody called Willie, do you? He runs Orkney Seafoods? No, I don't know his surname. It's going to be tougher than I thought. You don't know Willie, do you? Or you?
Sorry?
Do you know somebody called Willie? Or you are Willie?
Hello.
Hello, Willie.
Pleased
I'm
to meet you,
Richard from
Richard.
BBC. You confused me. I was expecting a beard. I don't know why. I just was.
We produce about 5,000 tonnes of salmon up here in the Orkney Islands.
Willie says he's proud of the fact that his salmon have very low levels of cancer-causing chemicals. This, he says, is due to him using high-quality raw materials in the pellets he feeds to his fish.
And what's been the effect of the salmon scare? Presumably one day, were you having your breakfast and you open the newspaper and there it said, "Good farm salmon, gonna kill it."
Yeah, I mean, I first heard it on the radio and television.
And what's been the effect of it since then for you?
Our orders were reduced by more than 40%.
40%?
Just almost immediately.
Well, how quickly? Like the day after they stopped buying it?
Yeah. So it resulted in me having to lay off people, make them redundant.
Had you had to do that before? I mean, is this...
Never before. We've taken such a knock, then it's not a guarantee that we will recover.
I've arranged to meet Dr. David Carpenter. He was a name probably familiar to you,
Yes.
I'd imagine. He's going to come here. Now, nobody else has been able to get hold of him. He practically went...
I'm a bit concerned about how Willie is going to respond to Dr. Carpenter when he meets him. He blames Dr. Carpenter and his report for his problems. He's still not sure if his business is going to survive.
The thing is, Dr. Carpenter has a reputation, let's say, for saying he'll go somewhere and then not. Remember the conference in Edinburgh? Said he was going to turn up and just didn't. And when he doesn't show, it makes you worry.
In fact, Dr. Carpenter doesn't show. Dense fog means his plane can't land. That is, if he's on the plane.
Sadly, the plane hasn't made it, but I have heard they landed at Wick Airport, which means you'll have to go down to St Margaret's Hope Ferry Terminal for 2:45 to meet your person, OK?
No. 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 Are you Dr. Carpenter? Yes. I'm Richard. Hello.
Hi, Richard.
Sorry about your trip.
Hey, well, listen,
You're smiling.
I made it.
I'm so relieved you're smiling. I really thought you might be very cross. Can we get a microphone on, yes, Dr. David? And then we'll get you in the car and get you set on the comfortable. We can put this on you.
I am relieved that he's arrived, but also a little bit, well, nervous.
I have not hesitated at all to talk with people. The only thing when we were basically warned by so many that I was going to be arrested.
Arrested?
Arrested for harm to the Scottish economy.
Well, the plan is, I've arranged for us to go to a fish farm. Now, I've met and spoken to the guy who runs it. He's called Willie. And,
does he know who I am?
Hello, Willie. Willie, can I introduce you to Dr. David Carpenter?
Hello.
This is
Nice to
Willie.
meet you.
Obviously, you know David Carpenter involved in the report. Willie, farm salmon. So yes, this is going to be an interesting afternoon. I'm here to be your umpire, I suspect. You're going to take us out and actually show us the farm as well, which neither David nor I have ever seen, we've just discovered. So that should be interesting.
You've never been out on one before?
Never.
Oh, well.
As soon as he gets there, Dr. Carpenter wants to clarify his findings.
In my view, on the basis of everything I know, the farm salmon are the most contaminated, consistent across many samples of all the things we find in our supermarkets.
Well, I can tell we did our own small experiment with a lot of stuff from a supermarket, 6 different products, and farmed salmon came, I think, second last. You can't deny there are other products that contain PCBs. It's not salmon alone. And I think Willie's wondering why his industry, why his business,
why were we
why
targeted? When we are producing food in the manner that we are, then we look to, firstly, the UK and the European Union safety levels and the World Health Organization, and we must accept that.
Well, in many ways, I agree with you that one of the problems is that the World Health Organization and the Food Safety Organization here in the UK have standards that are not similar to our EPA standards.
The result of the media sort of outburst with your own study, that shattered us, and our orders went down by 40%. So that meant for the first time ever that I had to make people redundant, more than a quarter of my workforce. And we have got a tough struggle financially.
Did you set out to do that? Did you set out to...
No.
Was it a food scare you wanted?
No, absolutely not. My job as a public health physician is to provide information to people that will allow them to live a healthier life.
This is really tough. This is really tough to take. That, you know, we've made the effort that we have done. The level's coming down, and quite quickly. So this really looks like we've been targeted. You put yourself in my shoes, and think about it like that.
Do you have any regrets? It was your call. It came down to your call to say this is an unacceptable level.
I regret the harm to Willie's industry. What we are hoping is really 2 things. One, that the industry will work hard to reduce the contaminants in the feed. And the second, which neither you nor I have any real control over, is that we get these national and international agencies together giving advice that is consistent and doesn't leave the consumer with a total inability to judge on the basis of what supposed experts are telling them. And that's really the situation we have now, that the consumer's at the whim.
It was a heated discussion, but Willie reassured David that he's using the best fish feed he can, and David hoped Willie's business would recover. He even ended up feeding Willie's fish.
See, they even like it from me. There we go.
I couldn't help but like these two. Different opinions they may well have, but they both have a passion for their subject. And then, on the way back to shore, David surprises me with one more point he wants to make.
Your newspapers have a reputation for outrageous kinds of headlines, and maybe that attracts readers, but it doesn't do anything beneficial to the consumer. We like to see accurate reporting of the facts as we have found them. And not always will everybody like all those facts, but we don't benefit at all. We're diminished by blaring headlines that go beyond the evidence that we have in our reports.
Back in London, and David's words are stuck in my head. He's angry at the papers, at the way they reported his findings. It seems there's another story here, the way the tabloids research and present their health stories. So it's back to the newsstand.
Look at that. There you go. 1 foot in the gravy. Exercise or die. Headlines, they're just amazing. We'll have one of those. How to stop aging. That's a relief, because I was worried about that and I needn't be anymore. There we go, just those, please.
I think I need to speak to the tabloid journalists, so I call all the tabloids that run these kind of stories. I want to know how they research their articles and how they get these headlines. Not one will go on camera, so I decide to play hardball.
You get asked to move on, and if we can't trace you, you get your vehicle towed, and I don't think you want that.
No.
Can I go through at all and see if I can find somebody?
We can't let anyone on sort of prior
Right.
management.
Prepare to be removed.
can't come up there. I just wanted to talk to a journalist about something. Can I get in that way? Excuse me, is this the Express? Mm-hmm. It is. Thank you. Well, I tried telephoning and didn't get anywhere, you see. I had no luck.
No interview then. But what I have got out of this is that the papers can have a huge impact on people like Willie and can even change the eating habits of a whole nation. But still, they don't seem to feel they have to answer to any of us. Clearly, I've got to arm myself to deal with the daily tabloid onslaught. I need the help of a rational and logical thinker. Enter Chris, a slightly kooky and eccentric mathematician who's agreed to meet me for a lunch of raw salmon.
Well, look, let's pick on a headline from all these food scares, and I want to get your take on it as a mathematician, OK? So here we go, look. Chips and crisps are linked to cancer. Shock report. Now, my reaction straight away is, ooh, yikes.
Well, linked. Does it mean causes? It could mean very little, it could mean a lot. There's no quantities there. It's a shocking headline, it'll sell a paper. I'd buy that.
That's what it's about.
Yeah, it's a shock report, I'd buy that. The journalist has read some original papers, okay, and he's processed them to the best of his ability, or her ability, but he's probably not a scientist. So I would look at the figures, and immediately it says here, millions of Britons could be exposed. Well, it could be.
So that's doubt in there?
Well, it's not expressing anything.
So it's going to rankle with you as a mathematician straight away.
Could be. They could be wearing green hats, you know. So, because there are a few numbers, you think, hey, this must be scientific. I don't understand this, so it must be true.
But don't assume that.
Don't assume that. If you go to the end of all these stories, they always end up quoting one of these agencies saying, don't worry.
Well, half the time they also say, I mean, it's like this one that ended up saying, don't change your dietary habits.
Yeah, so maybe you should read them back to front. Start from reading the last line of the article and work your way back up to the headline.
Not a bad idea.
And we are bad at assessing risks in everyday situations. We get things all the wrong way around. So, for example, you know how dangerous smoking is. You know, 1 in 2 or 3 chances of it finishing you off. You know, but you carry on smoking because you think, it'll be my next door neighbour, it won't be me. That's how irrational we are. But we'll play the lottery every week, even though we've got a chance of 1 in 13 million.
Actually, you're right, that's like an everyday...
So if I am bad at assessing risk, what are the actual odds of me being harmed by farm salmon?
So the chances of your getting cancer from salmon this year are the same as your chances of winning the lottery next week.
No danger of that, then.
Do you know, after all that, Scotland, fish farms, nutritionists, toxicologists, mathematicians and elusive scientists, I've made up my mind. I am going to continue eating farm salmon. But I'll tell you something, the next food scare that comes along, and there will be one, if not this week, then next week, I'm going to look at in a different light. I'm not going to get caught up in all of the headlines. I'm going to try and look behind them. Find out who actually started the whole thing off, just like I did with Dr. David Carpenter and salmon. And then I'm going to try and find out what the big organisations think. The people with the experts to interpret what the scientists have said and believe them before I believe the journalists. And as for salmon, am I going to worry about that? Nah. Hello, Richard Hammond, BBC. I'm just getting out my own versions of a headline you did about salmon a while ago. Only mine's a bit less scary, look. Salmon, known benefits outweigh risks. Yours went on about it killing us. Do you want to take that?
Okay.
Might be useful. I've got my own version of a headline that you did a while ago about salmon. You can take that. It's just, can I give you that? It's my own version of a headline you did about salmon. I've done my own version of a story you did in a paper. I just wondered if you wanted to take, you can take that. It's a free copy. I've actually saved a copy for the journalist who wrote it, and I'm going to drop it off.